Late at night on Christmas Eve 1885, in the small farming town of Seneca, Illinois, a woman named Matilda Rooney burst into flames. She was alone in her kitchen when it happened. The fire quickly incinerated her entire body except for her feet. The incident also claimed the life of her husband, Patrick, who was found suffocated from the fumes in another room of the house. The tragedy left investigators baffled. There was no reason to suspect foul play. Hey, I'm Alex Lam, and in this video of Stories of the World, we're going to be talking about spontaneous human combustion. But first, what the hell is spontaneous human combustion? Spontaneous human combustion, SHC for short, is the concept of a living human bursting into flames without being ignited by an external source. Now, the closest reference I can think of is sort of like the Human Torch from Fantastic Four, but the difference is the Human Torch can actually control and is immune to the fire, whereas victims of human combustion apparently don't know when it happens and they always burn to death. That's some pretty scary stuff. So let's get to the story. The earliest known accounts of spontaneous human combustion date back to 1641, but it wasn't until the 19th century when it gained wider attention. A popular author named Charles Dickens used SHC to kill off one of his characters in his novel Bleak House. When critics accused Dickens of legitimizing something that is not real, he directed them to research showing 30 historical cases. After drawing so much attention, this not only brought fear to the public, but this put a huge divide in opinions. One side thought that spontaneous human combustion was real and it could happen at any moment. The other side believed there was just a series of events that could have led up to a result that seemed like SHC was real. So let's get a little deeper. First, we're gonna have to talk about fire. Now, fires do not normally start on their own. When we look at forest fires, we don't assume that the fire started itself. It's usually caused by a lightning strike or a camper not putting out the campfire properly. I'm not saying that there aren't things that can ignite itself. There are, but they only happen under specific circumstances. For example, coal dust or piles of compost. But it's absolutely wild when people claim that humans can suddenly burst into flames. I mean, bodies do burn, no doubt. Cremation proves that. Now, let's look at the cases. When we look at the stories, they seem to be in very mysterious circumstances when victims burst into flames. The story usually have very interesting similarities, right? 1, no obvious source of ignition. 2, no open fires nearby. 3, the victims are always burned to ash. They're never, partially burned. They're always fatal. Some other popular claims is that the fire begins in the chest or stomach area, sometimes leaving the remains of legs and hands. And another claim is that the furniture and floor under and around the victim remain unburned. Now, it's obvious that some of these claims are outright false. First, there's many photographs of SHC victims that clearly show burning damage to the clothing and surroundings of the burned person, so we can rule that out. What could cause the ignition? Now, only about a dozen cases have been investigated thoroughly. Most of the victims were elderly, alone, and near flames. Often cigarettes, candles, and open fires when they died. Now, with that information, it's considered that the cause of the person catching on fire is due to the wick effect. If the person is asleep, intoxicated, unconscious, or otherwise unable to move, the victim's clothes can act as a wick. Because most people spend most of their time wrapped in flammable clothing made up of cottons and polyester blends, the flames draw on the body's fat, a flammable oil very near the skin's surface, which combines with the burning clothing to fuel the fire. So I think maybe on all these cases, the detective was just lazy. I mean, just think about it. Like, he's just like, yo, I got movies at 6 p.m. Let's just call this spontaneous human combustion and get out of here. And also, there's just so many logical answers that simply can't be explained. For example, if SHC is a real phenomenon, why doesn't it happen more often? There are 7 billion people in the world, and yet we don't see reports of people bursting into flames while walking down the street. No one has ever been seen, filmed, or videotaped suddenly bursting into flames. It always happens to a single person left alone near a source of fire. And if some natural mechanism actually causes human combustion, why would it only happen to humans? Why wouldn't, cows, dogs, elephant, birds, or other animals suddenly explode in a ball of flames? Even if the phenomenon is incredibly rare, with billions of animals on the planet, statistically, we should expect to see hundreds of them exploding every day. Though there is no scientific evidence that SHC exists, every now and then a case makes the news when officials can't find an explanation. Cough, cough, lazy detective, cough, cough. Now, the most recent case was in 2011. A coroner conducted that Michael Farty, that says Farty, right? An elderly Irishman living alone who burned to death in his home in December 2010 may have spontaneously combusted. Even though Farty's body was a few feet away from an open burning fireplace, the coroner decided that did not set him on fire. Spontaneous human combustion is definitely an interesting story. Lots of books have used the concept, and recently a Japanese animation was made on this idea. It's called Enin no Shobutai. It's about firefighters who put out human combustions. Now, I highly recommend you guys to check that animation out. It's really, 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 really well done. Anyway, that's the story of spontaneous human combustion. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories. Now be sure to check out my other videos that I've linked on the screen somewhere. I'm Alex Lam, and this is Stories of the World.